Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney with the Epic Company Culture Podcast, and today we are going to be reviewing a new concept that I haven't talked about before, but that we use heavily at Epic Culture, which is called the Culture Interview Questions. We have a lot of information up on our blog and in other places on these questions, but I'm going to highlight a little bit about the Culture Interview Questions, why we use them, and then I'm going to go through the question of this podcast. So first, what is a culture interview question? When we train people on our hiring process, when we go into an organization and work with them, the first thing we look at is how are they hiring for culture? How is culture injected into that process to find the right people, attract the right people, and get them on board? And we do this by injecting some culture interview questions. Now, how does this work? We will come up with roughly 4 to 5 questions that everybody has to answer when they apply. Now, the amazing thing about this is we don't have to change it per job. So what we see a lot of times is people will come up with different questions for different job postings, and HR has to do a whole lot of work to tweak these questions each time. So you post a job for a developer and it has 5 developer questions that they have to do just to apply. And then you post one for an HR position and they have to, have 5 different questions. Well, it's really hard to come up with different questions every time, and it's just a lot of work. The other thing is just because they can answer some job specific questions doesn't mean they match the culture. So we really interview for culture first. That is our first goal, is to work with organizations and for our organization to hire on culture first. We do that by adding these culture questions. So in that, what happens for an applicant? They will find our job posting and they will apply. When they apply to that job posting, they get an autoresponder. So we have an email set up, very inexpensive way to do this. There's an auto response that comes out from, in our case, resumes at epicculture.co. And when that response comes back, it says, hey, thanks for applying. We would like you to answer the questions below and respond to careers at epicculture.co and copy and add your resume to that response. Now, one amazing thing that happens before I get to the culture questions that we ask is we have a huge drop off in the number of people in the funnel. So an example of that would be if I get 100 people that hit apply on Indeed, I will only get roughly 15 to 30% of those people, in this case with 100 people, 15 to 30 people that actually respond to those culture questions. So I have automatically made my job significantly easier. I've cut out a majority of the applicants. And these are a lot of times people are just going and clicking apply. We'll get into this process a little more in a future podcast, but I do want to highlight a little bit about how it works so that you understand the flow. Now, when they get that autoresponder with those culture questions, these are questions that have been purposely chosen to fit our company culture. In this case, one of the questions that we have is, why did you pick the college that you chose? This is an example question. And what we're looking for a couple different things with this question. And there's lots of good answers and there's lots of very bad answers. And just by answering this question better or worse, or in one way or another, does not filter you out. But the culmination of all of the answers may in fact filter you out or help you move forward into our process. So in this case, why did you pick the college that you chose? A bad answer that we would receive on this is, I don't really have a reason, right? It's hard to convey in text, but basically they will not have an answer, right? So that's a bad answer. The other one would be something similar to, it was the closest college to me, or one of a myriad of other reasons where you can really just feel that they didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. Now, this doesn't mean that I am not going to select this person and move it forward. I'm just trying to dig deeper into that psyche. What is their decision-making process? So on the flip side, what is a good answer? A good answer would be along the lines of, well, it's a top SEC school. My brother went there. My father went there. Something along those lines, maybe, mother, sister, whatever it might have been, family member. And it was close. It was in state. And, they had the career path that I wanted to follow. And so I picked that school. And that's a pretty good answer, right? I would say that's a solid answer. There's a little bit of thought that went into it. Now, let's get into the best answer. The best answer you can get is one where you can really tell that there was some solid thought that went into it, right? They pined over it a little bit. They went through the process. So the best answer in this case would be something along the lines of, well, I knew that I wanted to go into X role and a certain career path. So maybe they wanted to go into veterinary medicine. They knew what career path they wanted to take. They looked up the top 3 schools in the country on veterinary medicine, and they found out that one of their local schools that would give them in-state tuition was actually number 3. And their response is around, well, I did all this research and I also picked the best balance of, well, not only was it number 3, so it was a great school for veterinary medicine, but it was also in-state, so I got to balance in-state tuition, and they made a good economic decision. So not only did they make a good economic decision, they made a good decision where they'd be around family and friends, and they made a top selection in the school that they were choosing. So that would be an amazing answer, right? That's really the answer that we're looking for. But we all didn't make those decisions. And I'll be perfectly honest, I definitely could not answer that question in that way. Mine would probably be a mediocre answer at best. So again, we're not discounting somebody or taking that away from them when they answer a good or bad on one of these culture questions. What we're doing is we're looking at them as a whole. And then also when somebody answers multiple culture questions like this, we're also using it for comparison. An industry or a historical trend. Do all of their questions line up well, in their decision-making process? So what I would like for you to think about is, what kind of culture questions are you asking during your interview process that match not only who you want in the business, but the type of culture and the type of person that they are around their decision making, and how will that correlate to the organization that you have and how they'll make decisions in your business. Obviously, college and who you chose for college is a challenging one, because we're coming from a place when we were young and impressionable and all those the good things. But there are other really good questions that you can use to gauge this later in life. So think about those culture questions and see how you can help hire people that match your company culture.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.